He opened the door quietly, the cold wind rushing in like a whisper of finality. In his arms was a trembling little puppy, no more than a few weeks old, its tiny body barely heavier than a loaf of bread. The man didn't look at it. His eyes were distant, locked on the darkness ahead. Without saying a word, he stepped outside, clutching the puppy like a burden he couldn't wait to drop. The street was empty. The night was still. What he was about to do wasn't cruel in his mind, it was necessary. But what happened next? No one expected. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who smiled often. He lived alone in a small house at the edge of town, tucked between rustling trees and fading memories. His days were quiet, predictable, just the way he liked them. He worked long hours at a mechanic shop, came home to microwave dinners, and rarely spoke more than a few words to anyone. Life, to him, was best when uncomplicated. One rainy evening, his younger sister showed up unannounced, drenched and flustered, holding a cardboard box. Inside was a tiny brown and white puppy with wide, blinking eyes and a wagging tail. "I found him behind the gas station," she explained. "I can't keep him. Just for a few days, please." Daniel protested, but his sister was gone before he could finish his sentence. He stared at the box in disbelief. The puppy looked up at him, hopeful, clueless. Daniel sighed and set it down by the heater. He didn't want a pet. He didn't want anything that needed him. But that night, the puppy cried until he finally tossed an old towel into the box and muttered, "Quiet down." He tried to convince himself it was temporary, but deep down, something had already begun to shift. The first few days were manageable. The puppy, who Daniel refused to name, slept most of the time, curling into a ball on the old towel. But by the end of the week, everything began to unravel. Chewed shoelaces, shredded newspapers, and small puddles on the floor greeted Daniel after long shifts at work. The house, once quiet and controlled, now felt like chaos wrapped in fur. Daniel tried ignoring it. He stopped feeding the puppy on time, hoping it would tire out and calm down. But the pup only grew more energetic, barking, following Daniel around, tail wagging with blind affection. It wasn't just annoying, it was constant. And Daniel hated constant. Neighbors noticed the barking. One woman smiled and asked, "Got yourself a new best friend?" Daniel grunted, avoiding eye contact. He didn't want this attention. He didn't want the mess, the noise, or the responsibility. The more the puppy tried to get close, the colder Daniel became. Every time the tiny creature looked up at him with those soft eyes, Daniel felt something strange tighten in his chest. But he shoved it away. "I didn't ask for this," he muttered one night, slamming the door between them. The warmth in his home was beginning to disappear. It happened on a Sunday evening. The puppy had knocked over Daniel's toolbox, scattering bolts and screws across the floor. He'd stepped on one barefoot and let out a yell that echoed through the house. The puppy barked playfully, mistaking anger for excitement. That was the final straw. Daniel stood there for a long time, staring at the tiny creature wagging its tail, completely unaware. "That's it," he muttered under his breath. "You're done here." He grabbed an old blanket and gently wrapped the puppy, careful not to wake it. Then he went to the kitchen, scribbled something on a torn piece of paper, and folded it into his jacket pocket. His expression was blank, too blank. Without turning off the lights or locking the door, Daniel walked outside, the bundle warm in his arms. He didn't look down at it, not even once. He knew exactly what he was going to do. The road stretched endlessly under a sky smeared with twilight. Daniel drove in silence. The only sound was the soft breathing of the puppy curled on the passenger seat, unaware of where they were headed. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't speak. His jaw was clenched, eyes fixed ahead. Each mile felt heavier than the last. He turned off the main road and onto a narrow winding path leading deep into the woods. The trees grew thicker, darker, closing in like silent witnesses. The headlights cast long, eerie shadows through the pines. After about 10 minutes, he stopped beside a clearing, far from any sign of life. Daniel got out, cradled the puppy, and stepped into the grass. The air was damp, the ground soft beneath his boots. He laid the blanket down beneath a tall tree and placed the puppy on it gently. It yawned, then looked up at him with sleepy eyes full of trust. He stood there for a moment, frozen. Then, slowly, He reached into his pocket and placed the crumpled note beside the pup. A sigh escaped his lips, not relief, but something like surrender. He turned and walked away without looking back. As he started the car, the puppy let out a soft whimper. Daniel hesitated, just for a second, then drove off into the night. He didn't abandon it out of hate. He abandoned it because he believed he couldn't give it what it needed. But he never imagined who would find it next. The next morning, the woods were quiet, still wrapped in mist as the sun peeked over the horizon. A little boy named Mason and his father were out hiking nearby, enjoying a weekend tradition. As they wandered through the trees, Mason suddenly stopped. "Dad, is that a dog?" Lying beneath the tree was the puppy, shivering but alive. Its tiny tail thumped weakly when it saw them. Mason dropped to his knees and scooped the puppy into his arms. Tucked beside it was a damp, wrinkled note. His father unfolded it and read aloud. "Free to a good home. I'm not good at love, but he deserves someone who is." They took the puppy home without hesitation. Mason named him Lucky. That night, Mason's mom posted a picture of the puppy with a note on social media, explaining how they'd found him. Within hours, the post exploded. Thousands of likes, shares, and comments poured in. People were heartbroken, touched, and outraged all at once. Some called the man a monster. Others saw the pain between the lines of that note and recognized a man who didn't know how to love, but tried in the only way he could. Soon, Lucky was living his best life: warm bed, full bowl, and a boy who adored him. The story became local news. "Abandoned puppy finds forever home," the headlines read. But across town, Daniel sat alone at his kitchen table, unaware his simple act had become a beacon of hope for thousands. Daniel didn't own a smartphone. He rarely watched the news. But a week after leaving the puppy in the woods, he walked past the neighborhood park and froze. On the bulletin board near the entrance was a printout, a photo of the puppy, wrapped in the same blanket, sitting in the lap of a smiling little boy. His breath caught in his throat. He stepped closer. The caption read, "Found. This little pup now has a forever home. Thank you to the kind stranger who left him for us to find." Daniel stared at the image for a long time, heart pounding. The boy looked happy. The puppy looked safe. He didn't smile, but his shoulders dropped slightly, as if a weight had been lifted. That evening, under the cover of dusk, Daniel walked quietly down a street he hadn't been on in years. He stopped in front of a small house with a white fence, the same house from the photo. On the porch, he placed a bag of premium dog food, a chew toy, and a handwritten note that simply said, "Thank you." Then, without knocking, without waiting, he turned and disappeared into the night, finally, a little lighter than before. Sometimes, love doesn't come wrapped in perfection. Sometimes, it looks like a man leaving a puppy beneath a tree, because he truly believed someone else could give it a better life. Daniel wasn't heartless. He was broken in places no one ever saw. But even in his silence, he made a choice that mattered. A choice that saved a life. Lucky grew up chasing balls in sunlit parks and sleeping curled up beside the boy who loved him unconditionally. He never knew the pain of being unwanted, because, in a way, he never truly was. One man's quiet, painful act of letting go became another boy's brightest gift. It's a reminder that even those who feel unworthy of love still carry the power to give it. Sometimes, the most unexpected hearts make the most selfless decisions. And sometimes, that's what it means to do the right thing.